And he said, well, let me ask you one question. Have you ever loved anyone the way you've been loved here? And I said, no, it's impossible. It's not a possible love. I know we like to talk about agape love. We have no clue. It is not a human that you feel there. And I said, no, it's impossible. I'm human. I'm a human. And it said, you can do better.
Mary Jo, thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about it.
I am too. So why don't we start by you sharing a little about yourself?
Okay. I'm a psychotherapist and I work with relationship. Most of my work is with couples and individuals as well as saving marriages. Before I was a psychologist, I was a nurse and I worked basically in the pediatric neonatal ICU. And then in nursing, I was working as an intimate therapist. And then my husband moved and I took a new job in a cancer center. And I was the head of a psycho-oncology unit there. And that's where my near-death experience happened during the time I was working at that job. I actually was getting ready to leave that job because we were moving back to Houston shortly after I had the aneurysm.
So you said that you worked with stage 4 cancer patients?
Yeah, I worked with stage 4. I worked with pediatric. Basically, I was in a rural part of West Texas, and it was a hub city hospital. So people, when they had cancer, they came in and it was late stage. It was usually, it was something that they'd let go. And so many of my patients were in the stage of long-term care or death and dying. It was really tough work. It was very emotional. And I had a really difficult time during that time. Just the ups and downs of dealing with death and dying.
You had mentioned when we were talking a little before the interview that you did have a tough time, that you were angry about how some of your patients had passed and that you weren't too close to God or a higher power.
That's so true, Libby. I reflect back now and I compare then to now because now I talk to God every day and I think a lot about Him as well as the end of the world and all these things. You have to stop living for the riches of life and you have to really focus on what your purpose is and what you're doing while you're here. We're here such a short time. When I was at the cancer center, I saw so many, like in the pediatric cancer part of the practice, there were all these children that died of leukemias and lymphomas, just little kids. And it was so traumatic for me. And then with the adults too, I could relate to them. They were like me and they would tell me, they were moms and dads and how they just felt a lump or how they found their lump. And I developed a real fear of death too. And during that time, I remember my faith just really, I was really struggling because I was thinking to myself, if this is God, if this is an example, and people will tell you God is so merciful, but when you're in that place that you're angry at what you're seeing death and loss and just family heartbreak, it's very hard to see His mercy. And I remember feeling like if this is how He is, then I don't want to be there. I don't want to go there. And a lot of times, many of these patients, before they died, would ask me if I could see the angels. And I now know they were clearly seeing angels or parents or loved ones coming back for them. But I didn't believe it. I would ask the residents to get a morphine level because I was so suspicious of God and His mercy that I couldn't believe that part of the story. And that has really changed because now I believe the total opposite. I do believe God prepares you for death, and I do believe that God is there. And God knows who you're closest to, who you will need to see when you enter.
So now, after your experience, do you feel like seeing people or having angels is a sign of him being merciful?
I think it's his mercy. I think it's much more. I think it's God's ability to know us. God is our source, whether people want to see that or admit that. To me, there is no doubt. We came from him. In fact, when I had my experience, if I could have said anything, I would have just went, oh my gosh, of course. And when you hear these people, imagine what I would do if I died today or whatever, you can't help but you would get down on your knees. You would fall prostrate if you were in God's presence because he is that omnipotent. And I had a real sense. I was a sinner. I am a sinner now, but I was a sinner. And his amount of mercy and grace on me was incredible. And I work in science. I'm a science person. Like when people tell these stories and the audience says, oh, it's so corny. It is, I know it sounds corny because it's not a human experience. And to describe the colors and what you see and what you hear and the way your consciousness can see behind your head, it makes sense if you think about it that you're not in this body. The reason you can't see behind your head right now is because you have bone structure, you have a skull, and it has a limit. You can only see out so much of the side, your peripheral vision. But if you weren't limited, if you actually had a soul that was above you, going into wherever, you would be able to see 360 degrees around you. And I did. And other people do. So these things we don't take serious because it's not our logic. This is one thing. I was raised in Roman Catholicism, and the Roman Catholic Church talks a lot about mystery and being able to have faith in God by accepting the things you do not understand. And to me, that's extremely comforting now because my mind is not his mind. I wish it were. He's omnipotent. None of us thinks like God. We like to think we do. Some people are narcissistic or arrogant and they believe they do, but they don't. No one can.
You had mentioned that you had your experience when you were about to quit your nursing job.
Well, not my nursing. My nursing, I had only done the first 5 years of my marriage, and I've been married a long time. I went into psychology right away, but I was getting ready to end that job in the head of the psycho-oncology unit because we were going to move back to Houston. This happened a month before we moved back to Houston.
Do you think it happened at that specific time for a specific reason?
Wow, Libby, I have thought about that question a lot because, in a human mind, in my mind, they say trust God's timing, and I certainly do. But it's so incredible because if it had happened earlier in my career as a psycho-oncologist, I would have been so much more aware and able to believe when patients would tell me these things. But because it happened at the end, it's almost like he wanted me to see where I was with faith, and then after the experience to be able to grow in abundance. Because what ended up happening is I realized I had been so, for lack of a better word, so cocky or arrogant that I had believed that getting a morphine level is what they should do, rather than trusting that the patient was really seeing angels. And I think he wanted me to see how far away I had been from him. And he knew that would make me a better therapist from that point. Just having that self-understanding. And I believe it did. I believe it does. I think I'm a much better therapist now because I've had to rectify that disbelief.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned that you don't like to go into full details about your experience. because your story isn't meant to tell people what's going to happen.
That's right. I think what happens when someone has a near-death experience and they tell another person is that person forms ideas, and then they want more, and they should. I also think they can exploit things, like they can assume that that I'm trying to convert them, or that every story is the same, like God will show up for them the same way. And I don't think that's how God is omnipotent. God can do whatever he wants. And my story is so personal and so precious that the reason I don't like just talking about it, I wrote a book about it so I could get it factual, is I don't want it hyped up or exploited to be something that it's not. If it's from God, it has to stay with God, and it has to be accurate and honest. And that's why I'm very protective of it. I've done stories on different morning shows, but I'm very careful how they handle it. It's like the most precious blessing you ever get in your life. Your job is to protect it.
Quick break real quick to just say that I really, really hope you are enjoying this episode. And if you are, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe below so you can start seeing more of these wonderful episodes that will be out every Friday. Thank you.
And that's my job with my story.
I completely understand that and respect that.
I had mine because of an aneurysm, and aneurysms are genetic. Like, you're born with weakening in your arteries. And some are, you've heard of aorta, they're in the heart, or the descending aorta, that's the one that opens in the abdomen, or the one in the head, the cerebral. But you can have them all over the body. And in fact, 40% of the population walks around with aneurysms. They just don't know it, and they don't die from it because they don't have high blood pressure. With mine, I had the perfect storm because I had the weakening in a vessel in my brain, and then I had hypertension that was not medicated, just medicated 2 weeks before the surgery or the aneurysm burst. And then I was working out because I'm an athlete, so I was at the gym. And I had taken a spin class, and then I was lifting weights, and I was pushing a lot of weights. I was doing the chest press when it burst. And when it burst, it was fascinating because I'm an ex-nurse, and it felt like it stabbed the back of my neck, like someone had stabbed it. And when you get a bleed in the brain tries to help you survive. So it opens up these 3 valves in the bottom of your head. Everybody has them. And it drains down into the spine. But the problem is your body, your central nervous system fluid, you can only hold, like, the capacity without having brain damage or, some kind of paralysis, is like 10 cc's. But when I bled, they think I bled between 30 and 60 cc's. So, I smelt blood all over, but most of it was still in the head because the drains get clogged when there's so much blood. And that's what caused the problems. I just was awash in blood in the brain. And the brain has a blood-brain barrier, but my blood was underneath that. So it was really a dangerous situation. They called an ambulance, and when I was on the way to the hospital, I surrendered to God. It hurt so bad because anytime you have blood in the brain or any fluid, it's killing brain cells. It's very painful. And so I surrendered to God there because I thought I was going to lose, I was in and out of consciousness. And at that point, everything changed in my life. I felt relieved. I felt totally calm. I didn't have the near-death experience yet. I had that 4 days later. I got septic, and that's when they thought I was going to die. And that's when I remember seeing the light, a light that wasn't a normal light. and it just got bigger, and I was in it. And then he held me.
When you first saw the light, were you aware what it was?
Well, I evaluated because I thought, what is that? Your consciousness is still, I think the soul is in the consciousness because you're able to evaluate logic. And I asked myself, what is that? It's not normal. And yet you're drawn to it. And then I thought, it's so small, like that can't be a tunnel and then all of a sudden it was larger and I was in it. It was a light, and I had the sensation that he held me and he talked to me because you feel it in your skin. You don't listen with ears. Like it's like acoustic sound. It's all over. And I could look back and see my body. I mean, I wasn't turning my head. I was in one position, I think. I told God everything I was doing that I could think of, that I was doing well. And he said, well, let me ask you one question. Have you ever loved anyone the way you've been loved here? And I said, no, it's impossible. It's not a possible love. I know we like to talk about agape love. We have no clue. It is not a human that you feel there. And I said, no, it's impossible. I'm human. I'm a human. And it said, you can do better. And then he hugged me and he released me. He called me by name. He knows every creature's name. This I am sure. A lot of people call and they're terrified of death and they want answers and they want to know if I saw Jesus. God held me. And God is three. He's the Holy Trinity to me. So, you can call him what you want, but I call him God. He was my source and he was God. I had been there before. I was born, I believe God created me and I was born into my mother because I started there with him. And I think all of life does. And I used to never believe that. But believe me, things change. And I'm not sure where I was beautiful, but people assume it's heaven, but I'm not sure that's where heaven was. I mean, I know God was there, but it was beautiful, it was brilliant, but I can't say that was heaven. I have an idea that when we go to God, we're not just going to sit on a cloud and float around. I think God has another job for us. He has more, and whether that's all spiritual, I don't know. He created us. He can do whatever he wants.
You had mentioned, and your answer to my parent question made me think about it, that your story is meant to help people understand there's more than what our minds are limiting us to.
That's right. I think sometimes right now you're struggling in the world and there's so much stress and there's so much hate and animosity. And I just want people to remember there is something bigger than us and it's in control. And I can't tell you how your life will be or what's happening, but I do believe in prayer. I do believe in prayer and I pray every day because I have seen changes in myself. I'm a psychologist. My job is to try to help people change so they can make their marriage work. And it takes years. I mean, probably less than 2 minutes with God. My whole life changed. So it shows you the omnipotence of his being. And he is here. He is with you. God doesn't detach from you. You've detached from God. I know that too because I did it. So I'm not proud of it, but I did do it.
And you had said that our minds limit us. And I feel like, I know with death and grief, our minds really just don't understand it.
That's right. I think the way to live your life is to be compassionate of others and to care for every human. Try to see God's face in them so you can be gentle and kind as much as you can. And outside of that, I think know that there is a God and you will answer someday. You will answer to him. And simply being a good person, I don't think that's going to be enough. I think you have to do more than that. But if you believe in God, I believe He will accept you no matter what you give Him. His grace is unlimited.
So what advice would you give to people that are experiencing grief or had recently lost a loved one and they're having a hard time?
I would say get up in the morning and talk to God, write Him a letter, talk to Him again at lunchtime, and talk to Him before you go to bed at night. And know that grief is normal. It's a way for your brain to process letting go. It hurts. It's supposed to hurt. Try as much as you can to take that hurt and make it channel you to think about somebody else at least once a day and do for someone else. That will raise your serotonin, will make you feel better, and make yourself walk. More than anything, just know you are not alone. You are not alone. No one is. Because anytime you pray with Him, you have already brought Him in. I know it's hard because you can't see Him, but maybe you can if you start seeing Him in other people. This has really helped me.
I love that. What would you say to Mary Jo before your experience, knowing everything you know now?
I would sit down with her and say, you have got to get a grip because you are moving in the wrong direction. And if you continue this, you're going to be miserable in life. You're never going to know how incredibly you are loved. And that's a big deal because I have a husband I've had forever. I got married to him when I was 20 and we're still together, and I have 2 kids and now I have grandchildren. So I didn't then. I had 2 loving kids who were in school that I adored. And so when I say that God's love trumps all of those, that is a big deal.
So what do you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned from your experience on how to move forward?
I think the biggest lesson is that God knows me. He knows me intimately. And so where I used to sin and say, well, I don't really know if He exists anyway, I don't anymore. When I sin now, I feel really bad because I know He loves me. And I know it's a slap in His face. And that's really hard. I think I make better choices.
I love that. Can you share where people can find you?
Sure. Well, I love you to go to my YouTube channel, and that's my name and YouTube. But if you're not on YouTube, just go to my website. It's maryjorapini.com. And you can get my email through there and you can kind of see what I'm up to.
And you have a book as well. Do you want to share about the book?
The book is called Is God Pink? And I have a couple books, but that's the book about this story. And you can get it from a publisher called Bayou Publishing. It is not available on Amazon, but it is through that publishing.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Mary Jo, thank you so much for being here today and sharing about your experience.
Thank you, Libby. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for watching Lost and Found. If you like this episode, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe below. There will be new episodes every Friday. And if nothing else, just remember that grief is really hard. You don't have to do it alone. And I love you. And until next time.